So, welcome to Mr. Ralph's pop punk class. So, ground zero of punk in Toronto started here at the Ontario. It was called the Ontario College of Art then. There wasn't this chapeau thing that they built. I have no idea. There's actually, it's a floor, you can go up there.
Oh wow, so that's added on.
That's added on. And it seems to be a trend because the art gallery up there has got one of these things. So, it's good for the architect, bad for the aesthetics, I think. But so what was happening is, of course, as we all know, we all knew that there was stuff happening because we all bought rock scene, right? We all saw Patti Smith and the Ramones. Stuff was going on, but none of us had actually seen any of these things. It was just pictures in magazines that we saw.
Actually, I had seen Patti Smith at the Roxy.
Well, you're American.
Not from Toronto.
Don and Kelly. This. She's not a reporter or anything. She's just she's from another class, just kind of auditing what we're doing, so I can get raised. but Kelly, Don saw the Diodes in 1980.
Yeah, that's when it was.
When they made LA. So you were there.
You were there. When I told John, he couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, you'll see them tonight. They're pretty easy. So what was happening here at the college, which was very interesting, is I think once or twice a year, because New York is not that far, it's like an 11-hour drive, I think, they would do these art excursions or art trips to New York. So in 75, I think they did one, and of course everybody doesn't go where they're supposed to go. They all went down to the Bowery and all that. So the first wave of them saw some of that punk thing that was happening, so it wasn't called.
So they were all art students?
Yeah.
Okay, of course.
And then in 76, the people that we're concerned with all went down there. A lot of the Diodes guys, a whole bunch of other people. And they saw CBGBs happening. They saw television. They saw all those bands because they're all playing every week. They're right there. So they came back and started spreading the word. And at the same time in 76, the first person that actually toured was Patti Smith. So she was the first one. She played Massey Hall here, which is a 2,000-seater old theater. But she didn't quite ignite the flame. It was kind of that was more like literature types. They were kind of like, oh, this is cool, she's got a white shirt. But her album is, but what happened was when the Ramones came in 76 at the New Yorker, it's like whoever bought, the 300 people that bought the first Velvet Underground album, they all started bands with people. The 300 people that saw the Ramones at the New Yorker, you left and you're like, hey, I can do that. So everybody started a band, right? But again, everybody was prepared because a lot of the people coming here already knew what was happening. So now, questions? It's sort of the prehistory of it. I'm just trying to. So the Ramones were the connecting factor, and the same thing happened when they toured England. Like as soon as they hit England, Sex Pistols, everybody appeared, right? What the English did that the Canadians didn't do, the English sped it up. They took, to them, the New York guys were old. They were all like early 20s, mid 20s. Like the Brits were all 16, 17. So these heartbreakers, these are old men to them, right? This is like, don't know about these guys. So they took what they liked, mostly from Richard Hell. Took all his clothes and his hair. 20 bands appeared in England, but like they did in the 60s, they took everything and sped it up, right? So, because if you go back and listen to the New York stuff, it's kind of slow. Even the Ramones are kind of slow, but then you listen to the Brits, they've amplified it. It's like the Yardbirds did to the old blues guys. It sounds cooler, but
all the amphetamines they were taking in England.
Yeah, eventually we'll circle back and try to discover the original. It's like the Rolling Stones albums, like, who's this C. Berry guy? He's kind of Okay, well, we'll go inside and check it out. We're gonna go to what's left of where some of the first concerts happened. There's this show called the 3D show, which is Dishes, Diodes, Doncasters. Dishes were like this sort of in-between band, in between glam and punk, which didn't exist yet. Doncasters were this kind of cover band that just did 60s stuff, and the lead singer would later become Martha and Muffins. And the drummer would become the bass player for the Diodes. But in this context, it was the cover band. The band that really kind of stood out and made everybody kind of go, what the hell's going on here, was the Diodes. They were doing this. It was, the Diodes at that time was a completely different lineup from what we know from the first album. So they had this wall of sound. And the singer would come out, Paul would come out, and he'd have his lyrics taped to the microphone. And he'd have a little thing with a little stool with Coke or something on it. So it was pretty. But I was in the audience because a friend of mine taught here, and he said, "You got to check out these guys. They're way beyond what's going on here." So we'll go see where they played or what's left of them. I didn't go to see come here and then enjoy the cafeteria. And the auditorium would be in there, but it's all
See, I wish I could back in that. Make your own 3D. Cool.
77, February 77. Well,
here so
it
long.
wasn't like this.
I know. I
The
haven't
seats
been here in
weren't
ages.
here.
There are no seats.
There is, I think, on the second level looking around. There used to be a gigantic stage.
Yeah, I know.
That's all.
Yeah, they can move the seats out. I mean, even a couple months ago I was here. You can see that the temp,
Yeah, like that thing was
pack 'em up.
it was all controlled like it was like a theater play. You know, they had all the pulleys and personal tapes, and it was pretty cool. And then the cafeteria.
I haven't been here since the 80s.
But this is where there's a couple of shows that happened here, and mostly like school dances. But I think the Talking Heads played here. Like the Diodes got the Talking Heads to play here so that they could open, and they used it as an excuse to get their band together, right? It's like you did. Oh shit, we better learn some songs if we're opening for these guys. And that was January, and then I think February was the next one. Summer of '77. I got involved like later on because I was writing for a magazine called Cheap Thrills. So I had a column called Bump to Bump, and I had written a column because I'd started getting records from the Gizmos and all this stuff, and I sort of went, there's something happening, something new is going on. Here's like the first wave of it. And then this guy, Steve Leckie, who was starting the Viletones, got my number and started phoning me every day, like, you gotta come see my band, man, like, we're happening. At about the same time, I got a hold of Paul Robinson from the Diodes, because I wanted to do an article on all what was happening. So I ended up talking to him. And it was one of these things where it started as an interview. Next thing I know, he's kind of connived me into being their manager. And at about 4 in the morning, I'm like, yeah, I could run your punk club, sure, why not? So we need a club.
Man,
Can I go to sleep now? Ralph, you've got to do this. So what had happened, which I didn't know about, is there was this arts society called CIAC, Center for Experimental Arts and Communication. And they have, which we'll go to, they had a building that they owned. And they had an arts thing up top, a basement that they would have performance art in. But in the middle, there was the Liberal Party of Canada, or a Liberal Party of Ontario, which rented that, which gave them the funds to run everything. So they wanted to do some kind of radical recordings, and they needed a band. So they knew, I think, the Diodes bass player at the time, they said, look, we'll trade you. You can rehearse in the basement if you, the band, record some tracks for us. Like, we want to read some political stuff over noise stuff, right? So that's when I sort of come in, because they're rehearsing down there, and I come in and I'm shooting photos for my article and all that. And the drummer, John Hamilton, sort of goes, you know, this is some really amazing space. There's no place where we can play. Like, there was sort of this one club called the Colonial Underground, which is it's a little park now. It doesn't exist anymore. And he goes, why don't we just make a club? Because we'd found out that the SEAC guys had a special occasion permit. So as long as you had this permit, you can go buy cases of beer for cheap at the beer store, and it'd be like you're having an art opening or a wedding or something, right? So a lot of rules don't apply. Like, I didn't know you had to ask for ID. Like, I'm at the door, and Don Pyle this year goes, "Yeah, man, like you never asked for ID." And I'm like, what? Was I supposed to? I don't know. I think it was officially licensed for 16 people or something, and we had like 200 people crammed in there. It was you got a picture, like just white walls, and there was all this junk from some art thing that they had in there. So I took all the wood, smashed it all up, and I made punk benches. It's just like a log with sticks coming out of it. You know, and there were sort of things like this, I think, at the back. So it was whatever was left over. And we got a bunch of the bands together, and because one guy, I think John McLeod from the G-Race, he knew how to build stages. So he built a stage, and we had a backdrop thing. It was pretty cool. Like, it was like, you know, Andy Rooney, Judy Garland.
So this, you're saying that there weren't really any clubs to play? There weren't really even any bands? You mentioned like 3 bands. It sounds kind of like LA.
Yeah,
You're talking about.
well, like what there was there wasn't a club circuit, but it was all controlled by booking agencies. And the bands that played them would be bands like Rush, who weren't really doing original material. They were sort of a Led Zeppelin tribute band, right? So, and the way clubs worked in those days was you didn't play one night. You played either, if you were a new band, Zon, for example, or Saga, you would play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 sets a night, 45-minute sets, or 2 90-minute sets. And you had to bring your own sound and lights. So right away,
Wow.
like, who can afford that? So
Right.
you'd have these things where, you know, you gotta carry like 3 or 4 roadie guys, lights. I mean, not gigantic lights, but you know, that stuff's heavy to cart around. So if you're a punk band, that's beyond your grasp. Like, there's first of all, nobody's gonna book you, and if they do, you're gonna get like the basement of the El Mocambo or the basement of the Colonial, and there was a guy called Jimmy the Worm. Everybody's got a nickname, right? And he started booking bands in the basement of the Colonial, but that came to an end when the Diodes, of course, whom everybody hates, had a record deal.
There was a lot of that jealousy.
Pullback incident? That one?
Yes, so what happened was, this was at the same time that we had the Crash and Burn going. They had an old gig that they'd been booked into the Colonial, and of course this was the one weekend where I went out of town. And I come back, and it's like, what happened? Oh my God. So they were playing, and what people forget is the Diodes are like a really loud band. They are really, really loud. They're still loud because the guitar player has been deaf for 30 years, so. John, how you doing? What? So upstairs was this guy called Long John Baldry, who's one of these UK blues guys who moved here and became big here. So he's in the middle of I'm going to be doing an acoustic number now, a tribute to Elmo James. What's that noise? Oh, stop it. So these bouncers come down and just started beating on everybody. So basically the whole punk scene is down there. So the Diodes, of course, shit all took off, and mostly Teenage Head got beat up. I think their Teenage Head manager got whacked on the head. And there's this iconic photo that showed up in the Toronto Sun where it's this girl called Sally Cato is sort of holding Paul Kobach's head. She's like, ah!
But he looks like that all the time.
Yeah, well,
He almost died about
Yeah,
the last Diode show in Hamilton.
we'll get into Paul Kovac. He's a whole chapter. Ralph, there's a spirit behind you, man. One of those guys. So, but really sweet when he's not seen. So that was like Punk Riot at the Colonial, and then when we had our fanzine called the Crash and Burn News, so we had a whole diagram of like, you know, cops here, Diodes there, Paul Kovac whacked here. It's in the book, Chicken Like Dirt. I found it and we put it in there. I thought that was kind of funny. And then, okay, but we'll carry on. Any more OCA questions?
What was the name of the magazine you were writing there?
It was called Cheap Thrills. And what it was it was a free magazine. It was this promotion company called CPI, Concerts and Productions International. And they decided to do a free magazine that they could give out at their concerts to hype their concerts.
And at
But-
record stores. I always got mine at the record
Yeah.
stores.
And so, but what happened is it became this really cool magazine. It had articles, and my friend who edited it was a guy called Machine Rock. Jeffrey Morgan.
Was Rob Bowman there?
Rob Bowman was there. There's these heavy writers. Rob Bowman, I think, won a Grammy for.
I was at Records on Wheels.
Yeah.
I hired Rob there.
Yeah.
So I was at Wheels in '74
Yeah.
when we went from prog rock to punk rock. So
Yeah. Rob.
that's how, and Paul Kovac was Star
He got,
Records.
yeah, Star
They
Records.
bought records from Records on Wheels.
Yeah.
So
Where
I
was
knew
that
him.
located?
We were near the House of Lords, Young and Isabella.
Yeah.
I went to the streetcar when it was still the
Yes,
streetcar.
that's right. No, well, the bus was in the end of '73. They started selling the bus. Anyway,
Did Dave Smeltzer work there? Or?
yes, I knew Dave. I was there at the same time.
I was going to get into something now. I forgot.
Yeah, before.
Oh, CPI. Anyway, so it became this amazing magazine, and a lot of us graduated to higher, better things. But I got freedom to write about punk rocks.
So some of the Bowman was at Beetle before that, I think, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that's not punk, so we got to go. We're going to go one more floor up and just see. It was a very old historical tavern. This is the back of two floors. The bottom floors was the old man bar, and then all the art students would be upstairs. But they would have bands also, so if you were kind of starting out, you could kind of play here. But it's the same deal, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Mainly blues bands. Blues bands like John Hamilton's blues band, yeah.
Towards the end, some of the more like the dishes used to have
Yeah, I saw the dishes.
extended here.
So there weren't
And
that
Battered
many
Wives I saw
original
here.
bands at that time, right?
Well, they were forced to do covers. That was the idea
they
that you
played
couldn't do
covers on-
originals, yeah.
Well,
Remember,
they started to later. The dishes played originals, and then
well, later on, but
This is-
yeah.
this was
but
the
here
actual
I
back
saw
end.
the but the blues bands. I saw was coming to see blues bands 74, 3. John Tillman was. Do you know him? Established blues guitar.
The name's Phil. I don't think I actually saw John Tilden, but I do remember the band playing around, yeah. They had that economy going on.
Is the Crash and Burn building. To Crash and Burn itself. So our basement is where these offices are. That was the Crash and Burn. This was the main office. So this would take you up to the SEAC offices. I think the top floor, the two middle ones with the liberal
That would have been better if there was somebody in it.
Oh, it's still there.
Seen the wooden pole, a lot of videos.
I would have been my city here. We're all like,
Isn't it funny though? You know, building that was so
They must
wherever and then all these
it
years.
would be like the mask.
Yeah.
Except that's still
Now
a
we do-
basement.
Right, but now we do have
That
an
actually
office.
it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was just a chimney basement.
Light.
Basement.
Yeah. Oh,
It's just an industrial space.
right, right.
I was hoping to be the pole, but here's the entrance here. It says receiving. So this is the door. Friday night I would nail it up. So I was here because there's woods. I would nail it underneath the receiver. And nobody ever stole it. It's just kind of weird. And then at the end of the night I'd take it down and then Saturday. It was only open Friday, Saturday.
Where'd the sign go?
I have it.
You still have it?
I still have it. Yeah. The Dead Boys at the Crash and Burn. There's the pole. So we've seen the pole.
Yeah.
These are my pictures, my posters. This is all over the net now. What it was inside. So we actually can go inside. So what would happen is you come here. None of this stuff was here. This was completely wide open. There'd be a hippie guy called Lyle standing here.
It ain't me.
Just doing a little historical walk.
Okay.
Well, with OCA, so it's all good.
Yeah, the history of this building is incredible.
So, and then I'd be here with him, and it'd be like $2 to get in. I had my old movie usher's red jacket and a white shirt and a bow tie.
No, really?
Yeah, I remember it well. Yeah.
Ironic.
Awesome.
So I'd walk home with this little plastic suitcase full of money. And because I used to be an intern at the Toronto Sun, it was along my route, and I knew how to get into the Toronto Sun and go into their cafeteria machines and kind of so go in there, have a coffee, get some sandwiches out of the machines. Nobody would say anything because they'd sort of, if I knew how to get in there, then
Right, you must belong.
I must belong there. And the fact that I'm wearing a red jacket and white shirt with a bow tie meant nothing to them. So and like I'm literally walking along King up Parliament with about $1,000 in my little briefcase. So this was wide open, and so what you would do then is you'd walk down to the bottom.
There was a ramp.
There's a ramp, and there was cute girls, and you bought beer tickets.
Yeah.
And you took your beer ticket, and you went to the bar. The bar was a big bathtub full of ice, and the bar itself was two doors that we found, and we put them on top of a workbench. So there's like a doorknob at one part of it.
That's great.
And then at one point, the drummer got a fridge out of somewhere, so we actually had a fridge and the bathtub. And then, we'd serve the beer in bottles, but then some idiot started smashing the beer bottles. So I'm like, okay, this is not cool. So we switched to paper cups. And then at the end of the night, there would be a freight elevator over here, and I would get into the freight elevator, go all the way up to the SEAC office and do the books and all that. And then I wasn't living in Toronto at the time. I was living in a place called Mississauga or someplace. So I couldn't go back, so I would sleep. I'd come back down and sleep in the Crash and Burn. Even though the SEAC guys wanted me to sleep up there, I just kind of went, no, maybe I'll just kind of sleep down there.
So you only came into town for the shows?
Pretty much. I would hitchhike in. And then towards, that was the first month. The second month I actually moved to Toronto, and
Oh,
that's when I would walk down the street
okay.
with money. Prior to that, I would sleep here. And that was then there's a famous story when you get the Treatment Like Dirt book. There's a guy called Johnny Garbage Can who got his name because there's this all-girl group called The Curse were playing. And I don't know what was going on. He's having a fight with somebody's girlfriend or something. He was trying to pick up some woman, and the guy got really mad. And then he took this garbage can and threw it in the middle of the floor. So then we threw him out. and he became Johnny Garbage Can. But when I was upstairs counting money, I heard this big fight going on out here, right? Like somebody was just getting the living daylights beaten out of him. And I'm like, what was going on, right? So, and it sounded like Johnny Garbage Can with the girl's boyfriend or something. So the next morning, I woke up and I came out and there's like pieces of skin on the wall. Like Steve really got shit beaten out of him, right? So I'm like, so of course I freak out. So we get the hose and we're trying to hose this down. But that was kind of the final straw with the Liberal Party, right? They're like, what is that about? We came in and there was like blood on the walls and
It's too bad.
I think this somebody's with you before they had like, you'd come down here and there'd be a phone. And you'd have to. So they've since done something. Or too many phone rockers come down.
So were the nights individually licensed with the
Yeah.
LCBO?
You'd license the weekend.
Was there a closing, anything to do with fire regulation of proper washrooms or anything?
Yes,
I thought I heard
they,
that.
as soon as what happened was,
I don't remember any washrooms.
there was
washrooms,
there
yeah.
was washrooms.
One or?
Two, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, every night there'd be somebody going, smashing the thing and you have to mix it.
Wasn't me. I had a good time. I had a good time. I drank my beer and I had a good time. I was so happy because I could go out for $10. You have 8 beers. You had to pay $2 to get in the crash and burn, and that'd be the whole evening. $10.
How much
It
was
was
the
great.
Dead Boys? I don't know.
Beer was $1. I remember that.
I think the Dead Boys was $2.
And how long was the club operating?
A month and a half.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it seemed like a
A
long.
summer.
Oh, sorry, folks. I charged $4 to see the Dead Boys.
Yeah.
But that was the Dead Boys.
That was
That was worth it.
That's expensive.
I remember the Avengers were the first band cost $5 at the whiskey.
Oh my God.
That was a big deal. It's like $5. I'll pay $5.
So, but to answer the question, yes, what happened was we were getting all this hype, right? Like we would be in the regular club listings in the Toronto Star, all volume, and punk was like, well, if you want to go see punks, go down here, and there used to be this sort of fancy schmancy restaurant here, which was attached to the Royal Alex Theatre, right? So.
Ed's Warehouse and Ed's Fishing.
So
whatever.
occasionally you see these kind of well-to-do couples sort of, seems to be a crowd here, what's going on? They'd come
Right
down.
across the street here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
wow.
they'd come along the
So
back.
they'd be like, what's this all about?
I definitely remember that. There was a woman in furs and pearls, and she was standing up at the door, and she was watching everything.
But because of that,
It's very strange.
we got the fire department came down, and you
Yes.
gotta get the official bars, so we got those, and then that's when we found out the official capacity is 16. It's some kind of formula based on your bathroom, right? So the bathroom really is one person at a time. So basically the bathrooms are for the girls and the guys just,
Right.
this was the crash and burn bathroom here.
Right, right.
So you'd come up, and there would be like, it's all really nice and clean, but there would be huge, gigantic garbage bins. Because this was the back of a working restaurant, right? So this was an alley, it wasn't a street. Like it's a street now, but it was just a grimy alley. So there would be a ton of garbage bins. And I guess the one night, I guess when the Dead Boys were playing, somebody found a bag full of buns. And so there's a big bun. And then there's couples in the carriages that are coming by. So it's like, now, there's some story about the buns being thrown at the Dead Boys, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
I think that's
Apocryphal?
Story
one of
that
the contributors
popped up later.
to Treatment Like Dirt, making stuff up.
How many people would be crammed in here if the capacity was only
200.
Oh wow.
Wow. Awesome.
It was a sweat fest, but it was gigantic. It was a gigantic place. Like when you see the videos on YouTube, you realize how gigantic it was.
So there, who's taking video?
Well, film.
Film,
Oh, yeah,
right.
sorry. Film.
But
There was a couple people,
You
yeah.
could take video, except
it's
the video
so
camera
awesome that
would, you
people
know.
did, you know?
Well, yeah. When was an art project which
Oh, okay.
He
didn't
doesn't
get
allow
really
anyone
released?
to look at, right?
Well, we saw that last year. He brought it up here
Okay.
for a film festival, and he actually did talk about it and said he was trying to get a video producer or whatever to clean it up and to release it somehow on DVD, but he still doesn't know who to talk to about getting it commercialized, I guess. But hopefully that'll happen
Because he could make
sooner.
money off that.
Yeah, Ross McLaren.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have a copy of
Several
it, but
shows, or what did he film?
oh, he filmed a few different nights. He filmed the Viletones, Teenage Head, the Diodes.
The Nerves, I think.
The Nerves were there, yeah.
No, the actual film that came out has the Boyfriends, the Dead Boys,
Boyfriends,
Oh,
right?
Boyfriends,
Diodes,
okay.
and I think Teenage Head.
Yeah, Teenage Head's in there.
Some of it was a private party we had where all the bands played. And he made everybody sign a waiver where we waived rights or whatever, so we never get any money, nobody gets any money from it. I don't think he does either. You can only rent it on film, it's only available on 16 mil. And this Theatre Montreal rented it just before Christmas, and I finally got to see it again. It's beautiful, beautifully shot. But he took advantage of this other filmmaker who came in, who got a contract with the CBC to do a TV special on punk rock.
Right, Peter Vronsky.
Peter Vronsky.
That's on YouTube, right?
Yeah, that's on
Yeah.
YouTube too. So he came in and he had all the CBC cameras, all the CBC floodlights.
Right.
So all of a sudden, the Crash and Burn is beautifully lit. And that's when this other guy, Ross McLaren, came in with his cameras. So what you did, which was clever, is if you took the color footage, which was shot on the same night, with the black and white footage, which became the Crash and Burn film, which is sort of this whole other camera angle, and you combine them, you get this amazing film. And this is what Henry did. He did this mashup on YouTube. There's a Diodes video, I think, Time Damage, right? Where you,
Yeah, Paul asked me to do Time Damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's two guys shooting at the same night, you know, and one's shooting an Euro art film, another one's doing a straight up documentary. So
That's
because
great.
I was looking at him
Yeah.
and I'm going, wow, somebody, so you did it. So it's on YouTube. But Ross McLaren, he's, unfortunately for him, I've only talked to him once since, like, I think back in the 90s, and he seemed kind of weird. And they did a retrospective of him here recently. I wasn't here, but he got like all kinds of press. He was on the cover of I Weekly, I think. And he seemed a little bitter because in 30 years he's done all these films. Like, nobody gives a fuck.
We just want to try.
Except for Crash and Burn. And that's all they ask him about, Crash and Burn, Crash and Burn. And you got this weird, he was almost like putting it down.
Yeah.
You know, as friends of mine that went to see him talk, they said, you know, he was kind of being a little snarky about it, you know, and I'm like, well, you know, you should kind of watch it, you know, you should kind of watch it.
It was a funnel retrospective too, so I mean that was a big part of the evening because they showed the Crash and Burn film at the funnel first of all. So he did have a lot of influential films here in Toronto. He was a filmmaker.
Well, see, what happened was after the Crash and Burn shut down, basically the SEAC guys called us up into the office, and it was like, well, Ralph, you know, it's kind of, well, and then right after that Johnny Garbage Can thing, there was this crazy guy that I found out was on parole. He smashed his way through the front door instead of coming around here, and so then I had to chase him all the way to City Hall, and I'm like, what is your problem? I'm like, it's punk rock, man. What's your problem?
Yeah, it's always been this.
You know, and then I find out, because I got the cops, and I go, this guy just smashed our window, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they find out he's on parole, he's not even supposed to be out. And that's when I got called up to SEAC, and they were like, well, Ralph, this is not good. This is too much violence. You must find a new place. Bad South American accent.
Americo Moras?
Americo Moras.
Yeah. Okay.
This is not good, Ralph. You must find a new place. This is too violent. Go to that building over there. And I'm like, I don't want to be a club owner. Like, so we shut it down, and then they gave the space to Ross McLaren, and he had this thing called The Funnel. It became an underground movie theater. And there was one night, I came back in the 80s, and he had Punk Night where he played his film. There's this other film that one of the SEAC guys shot on video. which has never been seen since. It's disappeared. But he filmed the whole private party night where it was like Viletones, Teenage Head, Diodes. That's when the Dead Boys guys jammed with the Viletones. There's pictures of that. And he was out interviewing people too. You know, so, and it's amazing. I saw it. It does exist. It was played at the funnel. I've been trying to track it down. The guy that shot it, Bruce Eves, can't remember it. What? I shot it?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Well, I'll still give you, because it's not windy. This was Toronto in 1976. And there's a CN Tower. And you can
Nothing.
See there's
Nothing.
nothing going on.
Wow.
This is the gig that started it all, Ramones at the New Yorker
See,
Theater.
I had,
I didn't realize they were doing like
Perfect.
3 shows.
I had the tape, I had the CD of that show.
You have what?
My friends and I taped that show for the first
Oh,
time.
yeah.
So if you need a
Audio,
copy.
yeah,
Wow.
Because Colin's using it in the movie,
yeah.
Oh,
but
this is the dishes.
if anybody needs it,
The in-between band, the in-between glam and punk. Very good looking guys. The drummer, Stephen Davey, who is still around, he's like the food critic for Now magazine.
there's this picture, if you ever see him.
But at the time, he considered himself like the kind of the songwriting godfather, right? So every band he'd show up, I got a song for you. So the Diodes, he gave them a song called Coma. He gave the Viletones I'm a Rebel, Rebel Unorthodox. And then he's been fighting with them ever since. Change the words.
That photograph, by the way, was from a TVO production, Television Ontario production that they actually filmed at University of Toronto. I've got a copy of that. I asked TVO for that because we were doing some sourcing before, but they put a time code on it right across the thing, so it's kind of annoying.
On purpose, right?
Well, yeah, because I didn't buy it. Well, I did buy the, but I didn't purchase the rights.
Here's the actual entrance. So where the Diodes are standing here is where we're standing.
Oh, inside, okay.
Yeah. So this wall is there. Instead of a window, it was this wall. And that would be the door, this arch thing here.
And this is the lineup I first saw with the 5 guys.
This was the lineup just before they got signed, and he disappeared. He used to be in the Doncasters, and he was
John
the bass
Kozak.
player. Ian was the rhythm guitar player. And then he quit, and Ian switched to bass. And that was it.
But he went on, the other guy went on to form another band, so it was all right.
He's a big shot
That
computer
helps.
programmer
Yeah.
now or something. And here's Don Pyle, the author of this book, in his bedroom. So he's got, there's Bad Wives with the curse, Dead Boys. This was almost the cover of Treat Me Like Dirt, but then I found the other photo, which I can show you now. Oh wait, there's more Diodes, because this is Shock Theater. I'm trying to find the shot of him. Sorry. It's the cover of Treat Me Like Dirt, but the full frame. You can see a lot more. And of course,
So why'd you go with that one as opposed to?
I wanted more generic. It because of the girl. It was like, there's something going on here. And I tried all kinds of photos. That was the one. And Don, it wasn't even, it was like buried on his website. It wasn't even part of his photo exhibition or anything. And so we've made the girl now. She's
In the laundromat, right? Is that
Yeah.
that one?
everybody wants to know who the girl is. We've made her a cult figure, and I don't even know who she is. All I know is her name was Verlana.
That's unusual enough, you should be able to find Verlana.
Oh no, Don knows her. She's still around. He knows where she is.
Okay.
But I said, don't tell me.
Okay, yeah, exactly,
Keep the mystery.
right.
It's gonna be all these punk guys looking for her. It's probably this 50-year-old mom now.
Right.
Get the hell out of here. Get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. Or give me $5. Pulls. Okay. I was just looking at it. I should have put sticky note on it.
You can never find it when you want it.
No, it's always the case.
Every other time you open the book, it opens to that page.
Yes, right.
Okay, we are so close.
All right, there aren't that many pages left.
Cheap trick.
Well, this book
It's
is
a
actually
different book.
is pretty cool because he chronicles all the concerts that pretty much we all went to, right? And he kept all the posters and tickets. Originally, I mean, I actually commissioned this book for Bongo Beat, but I got so wrapped up with Treat Me Like Dirt, I couldn't really finish it, so Don went to another publisher, which is actually better because they have more money and they could do color. So we kind of had a little fight, but now we're buddies again. And I'm
Okay,
selling
just stay
the book.
mad at Don. Don's such a
I'm
great
selling the
guy.
book- I'm selling the book at the Diodes shows. So. He's such a good guy, and then when he was around at the time, here
There
it
it
is.
is.
So there's the full, and this is where I used to get my laundry done too, was at Parliament in Carlton.
Yeah, it's gone,
And there's
unfortunately.
Slater, it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Who is she? Where is she? Just put another tour of Italian punks. I'm looking for a Atlanta. You have Italy is out of control with punk guys. There's this one guy in Toronto called Luca. He looks like a dentist. And he's spending thousands of dollars on like weird, anything Canadian that's obscure. Like the weirder it is, and I go, dude, that is a horrible record. I don't care. There's only 5.
Yes, we know people like that.
Do you have the trouble farts? No.
Because it's on some list somewhere, so they have
They have
to
a
get
list.
it no matter
Yes,
what.
Right.
the
It's,
electro, the synth pop
book,
people.
Synth
the
pop
book, the
people
book that
too.
started it was called Smash the State. It came out in the 80s. There's this guy, Frank Manley, who also looks like a dentist. I've met him too. He's a nice guy. But he had, it was a funny book because it was like, he only put in bands that he considered punk. So there's no Teenage Head, there's no Diodes. I think maybe there's Viletones. And then he had all these other obscure bands like The Slime from
But don't
Newfoundland.
some of these guys do that to boost the value of their own collection by saying, this is rare, you gotta have this?
No, I don't know.
There's a lot of those
There
guys
was-
putting out those collector guides and psych
But,
and all
but
that.
it's a beautiful book when it came out, and he kind of kickstarted it. Then the thing is, it became sort of a guide, right? So so people want every single record in that book, and then he started putting out vinyl compilations, right? Like the weirdest. Like there's friends of mine, like there used to be in a group called the Grapes of Wrath. Before they were in the Grapes of Wrath, they put out a single called The Gentlemen of Horror, which every single one is hand drawn. They only made like 50. And then their drummer was my drummer for a while. So this guy Frank is like, Ralph, hey man, you gotta get me Gentlemen of Horror. So I ended up connecting them, and they found their master tape and they sent it to him. They ended up on one of his compilations, and I think he paid them. He gave them like $500 or something. So happy to. But they're like, oh my god, it was like shit we did when we were like, teenagers. And so in the new version of Treat Me Like Dirt, we're in our 4th printing, and what happened was, it's distributed by my music distributor, so it's in record stores that sell CDs and books. It's in there, but they couldn't get it into bookstores because we found out bookstores will only want books from book distributors. So Chapters, even though they bought CDs from Outside Music, they wouldn't buy the book. They were giving me all this grief, and I was getting really mad. And then so I contacted ECW, and I said, look, I've sold 3 printings without being in a bookstore. You gotta help me. And so they've done the 4th printing, and in the 4th printing we've put a 1-page discography of all the bands in the book. So all these Italian guys.
So it's a list.
So they got
It's
a
a
list.
list.
The most expensive Toronto punk single is called Raw War, and that was the recording that the Diodes had to do for SEAC, so they could get the rehearsal space. what it is, it's worth $1,000 now.
Jeez.
And it's shite, but, and it's rare. It's super rare, because it was never for sale. It was an issue of their art magazine. So the early versions of it, it's like a cardboard.
Here we have.
So the earliest version is like a cardboard thing with a copy of the lyrics and the single kind of glued on the inside. So and that they sent out to their subscribers. So I tell people, if you want, go find it.
What's the magazine?
So is it a flexi inside?
No,
Is
it
this
was a
like
real single.
Arts
It's a
Canada
single.
used to put it flexis in there.
No, it wasn't a flexi. It was a real single.
Okay.
But the SEAC had
Yeah,
I think it was just called SEAC.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Did we sell that newest Spasm band to Thurston Moore?
No,
That's
Or something
we had a newest Spasm band flexi.
from Arts Canada. So like these things are around, right?
yeah. So side one is the Diodes as a backing band, and they just do a countdown. So you hear this guy going, you people are the police. 1, 2, 3, 4. You must die. Okay? The subversion of the intellectuals. And the other side is Mickey Skin from The Curse. And it's the same thing. There's the Bruce from SEAC is reading something, you know, the proletariat must rise, and then you hear this guy go, you fucking piece of shit, you're just an idiot. You right there. And you got these two audio things going back and forth. So that's worth $1,000.
Keep your eyes out for Sienna.
Eyes peeled.
Awesome.
I thought I lost mine. I have mine. And then there's another version which is just the picture sleeve. No lyrics. So.
That's worth $2.
Rarest stuff we sold is the worst music.
I call it the record collector inverse
Yeah.
Yeah.
thing, right?
I know it's
Value
terrible,
has
but I
nothing to
need
do
it.
with quality. It's
Right.
It's only to do with rarity,
Right.
right? So the rarer it is, the more it does not necessarily mean it's great.
See, the quality is subjective, the rarity is objective.
That's right.
That's what drives the price.
There you go.
And the fact that our dollar is worth less to some of these European guys makes it even. And Canada is one of the last undiscovered countries, right? Like everybody's gone through the States. I mean, it's so bad there now. Now it's like we've got a compilation of acetates, scratchy acetates by weird bands, right? So Canada hasn't really been scoured and scooped up yet. So there's always discovery, right? You know, like there's always like some cool band out of Ottawa that nobody's ever heard of, or the band called The Slime from Newfoundland, right? It's like way at the end of the world. And you know, apparently they're still around. I met these Newfoundland guys.
Didn't they make their jackets on top of other jackets?
I think so, yeah.
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 But you know, thanks to Frank Manley, who I got him to do the discography in treat me like go to the source, right? They go, dude, you're the man. Let's make it. Okay, I'm just looking at my watch because loading is 5, so we got about 2 hours to still. So
Where next?
we're gonna go to Peter Pan for coffees.
Okay.
Is that okay? Sure. This would be, there was actually a bunch of different rooms. But the main room was here, it was the rehearsal space. This was one giant floor. That wasn't there, it was all flat. The band would set up here and face this way. So if you've got the Diodes Best of CD, they might have shortened windows, but this is kind of the vibe. There's our tour van there.
That's what?
Diodes tour van, the big Suburban.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting there. But yeah, it was, I guess it was sort of a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment thing. And yeah, it went all the way across. And it was owned by Cooper's Furniture.
Oh, that's right.
And they rented it to us. And then,
Somewhat on Monday. I mean, till Jack came in.
yeah, well, the Diodes left it in probably 1980.
Yeah.
But they were still there for a while. And then I think there was Congress next door or something. And I saw that.
Of course, it looks so different.
I used to have a room drawn. I just they're doing it. I used to print posters in a room here with my old sticker machine. It was all, we had this self-contained
That's great.
world. I think we could print our own posters. The guy that designed the first Crash and Burn poster, my buddy Dean Motter, had a studio here, so just run out of here. I'll go from the Crash and Burn and get my posters made, run back. So we were in here from 79 to 81. Those windows there. So he was still around, isn't he? I know
That's
everybody.
how I knew it was Steve Motter.